Nature with the first abstract, late-breaking abstract 4, adjuvant nivolumab plus ipilimumab versus placebo for localized renal cell carcinoma at high risk of relapse after nephrectomy. Results from the randomized phase 3 CheckMate 914 trial. Please, Robert.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. My name is Bob Motzer, and I was the PI of this trial. I'm from Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. We were the lead center of this trial, which included more than 100 sites around the world. It's a randomized phase 3 trial that was comparing nivolumab plus ipilimumab, which we refer to as Nivo plus Ipi, versus placebo in patients who have a kidney tumor resected but are at high risk for recurrence. It's the randomized phase 3 CheckMate 914 trial, and the formal presentation is going to be this afternoon at the Presidential Symposium. These are my disclosures as presenting author. And this is the standard, the quote that was asked for. I'll just read it for you. Standard treatment for localized non-metastatic RCC stage 1 through 3 is a radical or partial nephrectomy. Patients with stage 2 or 3 tumors have a substantial risk of post-nephrectomy relapse. And the identification of new effective adjuvant therapies for patients at risk of relapse remains an unmet need. So for the most part, the standard of care for decades following a nephrectomy has just been surveillance, a watch and wait, and hope that the patient doesn't relapse. And if and when the patient relapses, then to treat accordingly for metastatic disease. There is one a drug, Sutent or sunitinib, which was studied in the adjuvant setting and was approved in the United States, but not in Europe or outside the US, and really not used because of a number of different reasons, including toxicity and the fact that other drugs conflicted with the results of the pivotal trial that resulted in that getting approved. At the time that this trial was started, there were no other adjuvant therapies that were approved, and it was really brought about by the excitement with the new immunotherapies, the checkpoint inhibitors for metastatic disease. So since this study has been initiated, there has been one, and that is Keytruda or pembrolizumab, which was approved based on the Keynote 564 trial just last year, that read out last year. Nevertheless, this is an area where it's felt that there's really a high unmet need for better treatments for this disease. Now, Nivo plus Ipi is a standard therapy for patients that have metastatic renal cell cancer. It revolutionized treatment back in 2016, 2017, when it was actually compared to Sutent in first-line therapy in untreated patients with metastasis. It really showed striking results with a survival benefit, high response rate, durable responses, complete responses, and even treatment responses that continue after treatment is discontinued. So there was really a lot of excitement about this, and it really represented a change in paradigm away from the tyrosine kinase inhibitors or anti-angiogenesis drugs like sunitinib over to the checkpoint inhibitors. So this trial led on that excitement and moved that program up into the adjuvant space, comparing the Nivo plus Ipi to placebo. There's actually two parts to this trial, two independent parts. The first one was an 800-patient trial that compared Nivo plus Ipi to placebo, and that's the trial reporting here. The second one incorporated Nivo monotherapy, and that trial randomized 2 to 1 to 1 Nivo monotherapy versus Nivo Ipi versus placebo. And so that part B has completed enrollment, but it hasn't read out. This is part A, which was considered the main part of the trial, looking at Nivo plus Ipi. So here's the schema that describes the trial, and it randomized over 800 patients. The key inclusion criteria were people who had had the primary kidney tumor removed. It's called a nephrectomy. Either the entire kidney can be removed, which is called a radical, or a part of the kidney with the tumor, which is called a partial nephrectomy. All had to have clear cell histology, which is the very most common type of kidney cancer, the so-called garden variety, making up over 80% of kidney tumors. And the staging is shown here. This is by the TNM, and basically what it represents is tumors that are either large, more than 7 centimeters, and high grade, meaning the tumors look very malignant under the microscope, or greater than 10 centimeters, or they have other features going into the blood vessel, extending into the renal sinus fat, beyond the capsule of the kidney, or they're involving the lymph nodes, or even going to other organs, extending to other organs like the spleen or the liver. So a high-risk group. I would estimate overall for this group here, on no therapy, somewhere between 30 and 50% of patients would relapse. So these patients had evaluations that showed that there was no evidence of metastasis, and they were randomized 1-to-1 to this Nivo plus Ipi, which is shown in the red, versus matched placebo. Now, other adjuvant studies have been for a year. The Keynote 564 was for a year of Pembro. This one was meant to be kind of a short, intense treatment, so it was given over 6 months. 6 months of adjuvant with Ipi-Nivo, which is really kind of an intensive combination immunotherapy program. And the primary endpoint was disease-free survival, which really translates to relapse or development of new kidney tumors in the other kidney. So this was the primary endpoint. It was looking at relapse that was confirmed by a blinded independent central review committee. So all the scans were sent out, tissue was sent out if there was a biopsy to confirm that there was a relapse. And so, unfortunately, this study did not meet a primary endpoint. There was no benefit for the 6 months of Nivo plus Ipi versus placebo in this trial. Now, this gives a little idea in terms of the duration of therapy, and probably leads to some reasons why the primary endpoint was not met. The median duration of therapy in both arms was 5.1, and remember, the intended was 6 months. The doses of Nivo plus Ipi, the median there was 12 for Nivo, which was the intended 4 for Ipi. But only less than 60% of people actually completed the course of therapy on the Nivo and Ipi. And the primary reason for that, so a little more than half completed the 6 months. Primary reason is many of the patients came off for adverse events related to the Nivo Ipi. This is a very potent immunotherapy combination program. And 29% of patients, or almost 1/3, came off study for adverse events related to the Nivo plus Ipi. So the conclusions of the trial were that in this study, Nivo plus Ipi did not show a benefit as an adjuvant therapy in patients with kidney cancer who have had the tumor resected and are at high risk for relapse. Safety in this population was pretty consistent with the known profile, but there was a relatively high rate of discontinuation during the brief 6-month course of therapy related to these immune-related side effects from this powerful immune combination. So, obviously this was breaking news just within the last couple of weeks. The results of this became available, and we wanted to submit this as a late-breaking abstract. But we're certainly digging deeper into the details to look to see what particular groups may have benefited when the toxicity occurred. And then more importantly, the part B of this trial, which is Nivo monotherapy, which we're hoping is a better tolerated program, is underway and pending, and hopefully we'll be able to address that within the next year or so, that trial readout. So I think with that, I will finish kind of the formal presentation and lead
Thank
to
you.
the next speaker.